The Gold Cup final is Sunday. I think a lot of Canadian soccer fans hoped and maybe expected even that Canada would be in it. Of course, they are not. It's U.S.-Mexico on Sunday. What are we to take from this? A few days after they were eliminated in the quarterfinal, less than a year until the domestic World Cup. Where is this team right now in your mind?
They have to match the expectations that the entire country has for them, Feschuk, because they did not do that. And they set the expectations themselves. This team said that the lowest expectation they had for themselves was getting to the final. And they couldn't hack that. And it is not an indictment of the talent on this team. It is not necessarily an indictment of Jesse Marsch. But if they're going to get a mulligan, this is it. Because they should have beaten Guatemala. Guatemala offered nothing. Jacob Schaffelberg is probably going to look back at that red card and shake his head for a long time about it. And ultimately, I think if Jesse Marsch were to go back and look at how much he wanted to chop and change his lineup because he didn't have stars like Alphonso Davies and Stefan Eustaquio and Moise Bobito, he might have, if he could go back, he probably would have said, okay, I've got these 11, 12, 13, 14 guys. They're different than the lineup I played during Copa America. Let's really give them a run out. I think the problems really emerged in that second group game against Curacao when they just, for a team that's as compact as and works as diligently as Canada does under Jesse Marsch, they just lost all their fire in the final 20 minutes, which was a kind of an absurd performance for a team that works as hard as Canada does. And then that El Salvador game was just the worst kind of advertisement for soccer in North America. So I think, and I've said this repeatedly, if this team, and they're still very confident, they have a lot of depth, and they have a ton of talent. I mean, we're also talking on the day that Jonathan David just signed with Juventus, which saying that sentence alone is insane.
Yeah, incredible.
When you think about what this team wants to do, this is a massive disappointment because they set their own expectations. However, if they continue to and they've got really competitive, tough friendlies coming up. They just announced Australia. They face Colombia, and then they're in Europe in September to face Romania and Wales. They're going to have intense international friendlies. Maybe not, there's no more tournament play before the World Cup, but I will say this. if they get out of the group, and then they could potentially have 4 games at BC, place 2 group games in the round of 32 and the round of 16. If we're all talking again ahead of the round of 16, which Canada is hosting at BC Place, no one will remember that they lost to Guatemala. However, if these warning signs persist, especially Jesse Marsch's emotions, getting back and forth with an international governing body, all the bench kind of reacting to every single slight against Canada, if that continues to be magnified and continues to hurt their performances, then what we saw against Guatemala in this Gold Cup will become a symptom of a larger problem.
I mean, Matthew, it sounds like the program's at sort of a fork in the road. They now play with expectations. Over the last year, we've heard from opposition matches or opposition sides that we're talking about what to exploit on Canada because everybody knew how good that we are at soccer and the respect was shown. But I mean, it's a little different than it was several years ago when just any kind of accomplishment would be celebrated. This comes with expectation. And so how do they punch through that?
I'm standing outside BMO Field. In about 340 odd days, there'll be 45,000 people here when Canada's men walk out to host a home World Cup, which is another insane sentence. This is what they have to deal with now. And I was speaking to Stefan Eustaquio a little bit over the last day. It's obviously, one of his teammates in the Portuguese development system, Diogo Jota, died tragically in a car accident yesterday. But he said to me when I was kind of picking his brain a little bit about the team, he said, we're going to be fine. And a lot of that confidence comes from how close this group is. If you want to know how much they believe in what Jesse Marsch is selling to them, just look no further than Jonathan David. He played 56 games, including club and country assignments, and played 300 minutes in the Gold Cup and was ragged at the end. And yet he went out there every single time because of how much they believe in the vision that Jesse Marsch has. And Jesse Marsch has made it very clear. He romanticizes a run in the World Cup, much like South Korea had in 2002. It's one of the reasons why Marsch almost picked South Korea over Canada. They see a lot of possibility here. But now they have to look at these competitive friendlies. One, play their strongest lineup when they can, because that cohesion is going to be very important come a World Cup. But also, two, reflect on the psychological lessons they had, because you're absolutely right. Not only Guatemala, it was El Salvador, and before them in the CONCACAF Nations League semifinal, Mexico played a game in which they exploited all of Canada's perceived weaknesses. The world is no longer going to be surprised about the Canadian men's national team. Now it is up to Jesse Marsh and his group of leaders, which includes Jonathan David, Alphonso Davies, Stefan Eustaquio, Moise Babito, Alistair Johnston. They all have to look within themselves now and say, okay, because the lens is on us now. The microscope is fixed on this team. The honeymoon is over. The expectations are high. And if they don't meet them, given the talent on this team, it will be a massive waste.